today.
Welcome to the Alex Jones Show. It is I, Brianna Morello, filling in for Alex today. Buckle up, folks. We've got a lot that we're going to be discussing on today's program. I'm excited you're jumping on board with us. As many of you guys know, I host the American Journal on InfoWars, but today we're switching things up, and I'm very thankful that you're all jumping on with us. A lot happening in the last few minutes that we want to make sure you are read in on. But most importantly, we have an incredible lineup of guests joining us today, and I'm very excited about that. Let me just give you some brief overview as to who's going to be joining me on today's show. Sarah Gonzalez will be joining us in a bit, and there's a lot to talk about in regards to H-1B visas because she has been on the ball and exposing all of the H-1B visa fraud in the great state of Texas. So look forward to having her on for that. Joe Pags will also join the program as well. Mel K, who I know is a fan favorite, will be joining me later in the show as well. Autry Pruitt also jumping on to give us some business news and to react to the left's push to pretend like, you know, women are just too dumb to be able to obtain a voter ID and vote in our federal elections. He'll be jumping in on that as well. I'll also be joined in by Dan Ball, one of the great hosts over at OAN. Dan's been sounding off on a lot, but as many of you guys are probably well aware of, OAN and InfoWars have been censored as one of the great media outlets, and there's a lot of censorship going on all around the country still to this day. Dan's going to be weighing in on that, plus the failures within the corporate media, because CNN is collapsing, and we're going to do a little victory lap there with Dan. I'll also be joined by Ken Silva as well. Ken is a great independent journalist over at Headline USA.
You know, it's interesting. CNN has been collapsing for a while now, and of course it's being propped up by corporate sponsors essentially. And it's gotten so bad that in the last couple of years they've actually made a concerted effort to be less explicitly DSA style left-wing. I think they're still pretty much, sort of like, because you look at, for example, like that big investigation they did of infrared before the ACP even launched, and it was a hit piece. And they basically, brought Hassan on board because Hassan was in their good graces at the time because he was like the acceptable communist, I guess, or the acceptable Marxist. And then they put on that guy, what's his name? That goofy-looking guy who looks like he's from the Big Lebowski. They put him on to make him look like, he was the typical infrared gorilla. Sorry about that if that came in over live. I'm sure it probably did. But yeah, to make us look ridiculous, basically, because he was all over the place. Like he's sampled the Groypers, us, MAGA, everybody. Like he's been literally all over the place. And so it was a hit piece. So CNN is still extremely biased, and they're the fake corporate left wing, basically, is what they are. Even to this day, even though they've tried to moderate. And then the H-1B1 thing, we do need to reform our immigration system. It's a ridiculous system. Like the reason why we have so much illegal immigration is because our immigration system is so insane. But at the same time, illegal immigrants is what they actually want. They actually want illegal immigrants because that undercuts the American worker, because it allows for basically slave wage labor. And then the H-1B1 thing, H-1B1 is their way to bring in white-collar workers that then undercut, American white-collar workers as well. So every aspect of our immigration system is anti-worker and dysfunctional. So there's no part of it that makes any sense at all. But anyway.
incredible document diving, and he just learned more about Thomas Crooks. He's going to be joining us to detail just that. But we're not stopping there, folks. There's just been a ruling handed down by the corrupt judge, James Boasberg. And this one has to do with those Venezuelan illegal aliens that were deported and sent out of the country. Well, Judge Boasberg is now trying to get the Trump administration to bring those illegal aliens back into this country. I'll give you the very latest ruling that just dropped a couple of minutes ago as well. Plus, Tom Homan, is he giving in? You know, I'm watching everyone on X, and they're not very happy with what's going on right now. Tom Homan holding a press conference earlier this morning, and at that press conference, Homan specific.
You know, that is one thing. You know, I don't know how true this is. I'm sure it probably is at least somewhat accurate. But, you know, regardless of whether or not you approve of how Trump is going about enforcing immigration law, and obviously there's a lot to be desired there, but how insane is it for a judge to tell the Trump administration they have to bring back someone who is deported illegally? That is insane.
It was detailing, well, DHS's plans to start pulling more and more agents out of Minneapolis and Minnesota. Folks, I've been talking to sources, DHS sources, several of them, and I'm going to give you some insight on this before you get upset. Because there's been a lot of really disappointing things happening within the Trump administration. But you got to get some context here. And I will give you that context that you're not going to see anywhere else in just a little bit. Plus also, I don't know if you saw it, but the Minnesota AG, Keith Ellison, has been testifying today in front of Congress. And it's been quite the enlightening experience, of course. He's getting into a little bit of a pushback between, well, we'll play you the clips. It's been an interesting thing to sit back and watch. Plus, I'm starting to change my mind on this whole Epstein files situation that we have going on right now. It's starting to feel like to me is they're just trying to be very selective, and they're also trying to use this as rage bait. Now listen, we can all sit here and say that we side with sexual assault survivors. I do, but at this point, if you're not willing to drop the names, then leave us alone. Leave us alone. I'm done with this political, theatrical theater that we have going on right now, where everyone's pretending like this is all President Trump's fault. It's not all President Trump's fault. I'm going to break down my argument in all of this because it's starting to be kind of an eye-opening experience for me.
While that may be the case, that there's an element of it that's rage bait, just off the bat, that just seems like a ridiculous statement to me. Because when it's something of that magnitude, I don't care who's implicated. And I don't care if it's being used for political purposes. You need to keep the pressure on to get all of those names released, no matter what. So, no, even if it is being like manipulated and used as rage bait, that just means you have to keep the pressure on. So what Thomas Massie is doing is the correct thing. Just keep pushing until you get all of the information, period. And we can all see like the rage bait that's taking place, as she put it. We all see the manipulation that's taking place. That doesn't mean leave us alone. That means keep the pressure on. Keep the pressure on until all the names are dropped.
We're done. Plus those Mexican drones. Remember I told you yesterday the Mexican cartel were launching drones in the El Paso area, and that's the reason why they had to shut down the airport. Well, I'm going to give you my take on that. I don't know if it's really the cartel that had those drones circling around. We've got a lot to discuss in just a bit. Don't go anywhere. My name is Brianna Morell. I'm filling in for Alex Jones today. We've got a lot to discuss in just a little bit, so don't go anywhere.
Bovine Colostrum Plus, 30s that rebuilds your gut barrier, sharpens focus, and helps you.
If you are receiving this transmission, you are the resistance. Live from Austin, Texas, you're listening to The Alex Jones Show.
Welcome to the Alex Jones Show. I am Brianna Morello, filling in for Alex today, and it's not me. I had the first 3 hours. Kelsey Sharon will be on for the next, I guess we'll just say the 4th hour. So buckle up, folks. We got a lot to discuss, but most importantly, we've got a lot going on over here and a lot to break down to you all. A lot of congressional hearings going on right now, a lot of press conferences, and a lot of BS. So welcome aboard, folks. We have a jam-packed 3 hours coming your way, plus the 4th hour will be very enlightening. I know just that. So stay put. We've got a lot to discuss. Sarah Gonzalez will be joining me in this hour of the program, and she's going to sound off because she is one of the very few sounding the alarms on H-1B visas, but the scam that's going on right now in Texas. It's an invasion in Texas, specifically the DFW area, but we're kind of unearthing new pieces of evidence that show not only are these individuals who are mainly Chinese manipulating and scamming us out of our H-1B visa system that we have currently in this country that shouldn't.
Well, that's another thing. It's mostly not Chinese people, and I know this because I used to live in that area. It is mostly Indian people. I have nothing against Indian people. I love Indian people. They tend to be very sort of like socially conservative, and they tend to be sort of business minded, and they tend to be just out trying to get theirs, not trying to like grift off of anybody. So it's like whatever. But at the same time, I do find it interesting how politically connected the Indians are turning out to be. There's this whole thing with Zionism and Hinduism and the right that is just kind of off to me. So it's like individual Indians I don't have a problem with. This whole thing we're bringing Indians over as we are, I have to look at that and kind of think like, why? Like, why are we bringing, because you have to look at it too. One thing about Indians is, I'm sorry, they do have like somewhat fascist tendencies. History of the caste system. The caste system is, and look, I know a lot of Indians don't like the caste system, and they're on the same page with me on this, that it's basically a form of fascism. But that kind of baggage, bringing that to the United States, I have to look at that and wonder, if maybe they're trying to sort of swing America in a more fascist direction by bringing over people who already kind of culturally have that sort of background.
But it does. We're also learning more about how American companies like Microsoft are utilizing this. They're ditching American workers and they're filling slots with H-1B visa workers. It's an absolute disgrace to this great country, but we'll be talking about that with Sarah in just a bit. But I want to get to this, because as if these treasonous pigs weren't bad enough, we continue to see more pieces of evidence that prove just that. I want to get to this rumor that just came down a couple of minutes ago. It comes from the very corrupt Judge James Boasberg. As many of you guys know, he is I'll just call him, he's a communist pig. And the reason why I'm really infuriated by this is he just passed...
No, he's not a communist pig, okay? He's not a communist at all. He's a liberal. He is a liberal who is answering to financial interests, because that's what our current immigration system is about. It's about
citizens. But Boasberg seems to believe that also should be extended to non-U.S.
Just hit a pocket that didn't have any signal, so y'all would have lost me there for probably about a minute. But anyway, moving on. She's just joining on about H-1Bs, the scams that are going on there.
Invaders, in fact, had a ruling which is going to require the Trump administration to bring those, 100 of them, those men, back into the United States. Folks, we're talking about the worst of the worst. We're talking about gang members, cartel members, scumbags. Boasberg wants them back in our country. see, this is the problem here. This is the problem here. And it's not just Boasberg that's the problem here. It's the people who have enabled him. The members of Congress.
Well, that's the other piece of this. They actually want an increase in criminal activity because they want us to consent to more federal intervention, more anti-gun legislation, things of this nature. Like this whole thing with like the rage with the Somalis in Minnesota, that's what this is about. It's like the reason why they decided that they were going to bring in ICE into Minnesota, which has turned out to be, you know, pretty unpopular there. And I would say like increasingly unpopular everywhere else, is because they first had to make it possible for Somalis to get involved in, you know, some pretty serious financial scams over there to justify that. And so that's why they're bringing back these criminals. These criminals are their way of keeping pressure on us to allow them to extend their power and get us to consent to more loss of constitutional rights.
Using to get him kicked off the bench and do their damn jobs. That's the problem here. So when you look at the Boasberg ruling that just dropped, know this was only allowed because of the scumbags who are currently occupying right now Washington, D.C. and have allowed him to continue to do what he does best, which is obviously issue these very, very partisan rulings, which obviously do not work in the best interest of the American people. And he knows that. He knows that. He knows that. So, folks, right now he's trying to force the Trump administration to bring those scumbags back into the United States. That's the ruling that just came down from Boasberg just a few moments ago. Now, again, this has a lot to do with the fight that's been going on right now. And I know you understand, and I'm not going to go lightly on this, but I want to highlight the fact that the Trump administration knew that this was the problem. They knew that they had a long battle ahead of them in regards to all of this. When it comes to the fact that they allowed all these invaders, millions of them, they'll throw a number at you, 15 million, 20 million, just double whatever they tell you. We allowed millions of invaders into this country, and right now they'll have to do actually a very good job at pushing back. They've unleashed their own terrorists in cities like Minneapolis to taunt and to make sure that ICE can't do its jobs. Now, obviously, those ICE agents have done an incredible job at pushing back and trying their very best to go around all of this. But I know a lot of people were discouraged earlier today when they saw the border czar, Tom Homan, hold a press conference.
ICE being there is the whole point. That's the whole point of all this criminal activity in the first place. Because we could have put a stop, by we, I mean they, the government, local and federal, could have put a stop to all of this bullshit years ago. They could have prevented it from ever happening in the first place. ICE being here is the point. Them trying to make ICE ineffective is the point. Because the more they're able to make ICE ineffective, the more excessive ICE then has to be. Which, again, is the entire point.
There was a press conference going on late last night when I got the announcement in my inbox. But they were very disappointed. I know a lot of people were disappointed when Homan announced that he was going to be taking back, and they've been doing this for the last few days now, and they've been pulling DHS agents out of Minneapolis. Now, I know a lot of folks are very red-pilled on this one, or black-pilled, I guess.
Taking the ICE agents out of Minneapolis is 100% the correct move here. So, like, initially, bring the ICE agents in to deal with, you know, these scammers, basically. Like, I don't necessarily approve of it, but it's, like, understandable and maybe on some level justifiable. But as things escalate, yeah, you need to take them out, and you need to come at it from a different angle.
But I'm going to give you some context here. First, let's go to this. Let's listen to what Tom Homan had to say earlier today. Take a listen to clip one.
With that, in success that has been made arresting public safety threats and other priorities since this search operation began, as well as the unprecedented levels of coordination we have obtained from state officials and local law enforcement. I have proposed, and President Trump has concurred, that this surge operation occur. A significant drawdown has already been underway this week and will continue to the next week. We have a lot of work to do across this this country to remove public safety risk, who shouldn't even be in this country. And to deliver on President Trump's promise for strong border security and mass deportation, law enforcement officers drawn down from this surge operation will either return to the duty station or be assigned elsewhere to achieve just that.
All right, as many of you guys know, I do have some great solid sources inside of DHS. And a lot of these sources have told me over the last few weeks that one of their greatest regrets.
And again, this is completely the right move. This is 100% the right move. They need to pull ICE back, and they need to focus on prosecuting state and local governments in Minnesota, state and local government organs in Minnesota that have been misappropriating federal funds. They need to focus on that, because that's really the root of the problem, and doing that would have the full support of the American people. But even all that, that's sort of rearranging the deck chairs of the Titanic, because the real problem is our relationship with Israel. Like the amount of corruption and scams that are taking place by the Somalis, Indians, and whoever else, all of that pales in comparison to what AIPAC is doing in this country. So let's not lose sight of that either.
Was announcing this big operation in places like Minneapolis. Why is that? Well, hear me out. When they made these announcements, all of these left-wing terrorists decided to deploy to these regions. They've been holding up a lot of these operations by launching these so-called protests, trying their very best to stop ICE from doing their jobs. What have they been doing? Well, obviously, we talk about it all the time on InfoWars, but they have been using their vehicles as weapons. They have been harassing these ICE agents. They won't even allow them to sleep at hotels in nearby areas. In fact, we've seen it, but they've launched attacks while these agents are trying to sleep. They've also told me that they're really upset, mainly because of the fact that these operations have been so, let's just say, very politicized, that a lot of the illegal aliens, the violent ones, have left the area. So they knew they were going to be swept up into all of this. So they're no longer where they were supposed to be. And so it's really prevented ICE from being able to do their own job. So hear me out here. From that perspective, do I think that the Trump administration, as many of you guys have been very critical on all of this, but do you think that I think that the Trump administration is backing out of mass deportations? I don't think so. That's the one commitment that the president knows the American people will not let up on. And if he tries to do that, he will not have the support of his base. I mean, that's the reality of it. I've heard things from him, obviously. We've heard a lot of things from him.
No, what's really going to cause him to lose the support of his base is continuing to fail to stand up to Netanyahu and AIPAC. That is going to lose the support of his base. Let's make no mistake about that.
But from what I think when I listen to Tom Homan speak, I think that they're just trying to deflect the attention now. They're trying to get these left-wing terrorists out of the area, to get them to stop harassing ICE agents so they can go out there and do the jobs. The reality of it is they are following these ICE agents around. They can't even rent cars right now without there being an issue. And although, we'll play it a little bit, although Tom Homan claims that local officials are now agreeing to work with DHS, the reality of it is they have a big battle up ahead of them right now. And so that is something to keep in your mind. I think what they're doing here, specifically, I think what they're doing here is they are just trying their very best to deflect the attention. I think that's what you see Tom Homan doing here. Folks, we're not letting up. Mass deportations was the promise that was laid out, and that is what the American people expect. Nothing less. Every single illegal invader needs to be tossed out of this country. Doesn't matter whether they consider them to be violent or not. They've committed crimes. They're not supposed to be here. They do not belong here. We don't want them here. And they need to be shipped out of this country. We will not accept anything less. It's also important to know.
Bear in mind, I've heard some figures saying there's something like 36 million illegal immigrants in the United States. Yeah, that's not something that you're going to be able to accomplish. You can crack down on companies for, hiring illegal aliens. You can crack down on state and local government organs for misappropriating federal funds. There are things that you can do, but using ICE to manually remove 36 million people, that's wonder whether or not it was actually intended to be effective.
Tom Homan during the press conference said, I'll say it again, President Trump made a promise of mass deportations, and that is what this country is going to get. But it's smart law enforcement to do targeted enforcement operations. So that was a quote that made me think, okay, there's more to this. This isn't exactly 100% a just surrendering in Minneapolis. But then Tom Homan said this. Tom Homan's claiming that the local officials in Minneapolis are working with DHS now. Now, it's quite strange. I don't really believe any of this right now. I don't think that they are. But I want you to listen into clip 2, because I don't think much has changed, but this is what Homan said earlier today.
We now have the ability to
Freaking spam calls, I swear to God.
aliens in the safety and security of jails throughout the state at the time they're being released, like we've done in other states. I've also directed the strategic placement of officers in certain areas throughout the states that can respond quickly to sheriffs that want to release somebody and notify us. We need to be nearby so they don't hold them unnecessarily. So we worked on a strategic plan to reassign officers in those key locations. Arrest on a public safety threat and the safety and security of a jail is safer for the alien, it's safer for the officer, and safer for the community. I think we all can agree on that. It requires less resources for at-large operations. It just makes sense. I'll say it again, as I've said many times, we are not asking local law enforcement to act as immigration officers. I don't want them to be immigration officers. We're the immigration officers. We don't want them to be cops. We're asking law enforcement to coordinate with other law enforcement to help keep public safety risk out of the communities.
Folks, I mean, I hope they're working with them. I just don't know, and I haven't really seen much of a change. And those on the left are declaring victory here. We make no mistake, the governor, the AG, all of them think that they've just won this war against the federal government. Again, they were the ones that declared this war. They were the ones that decided to protect these illegal invaders and to carry out these attacks. So is the Trump administration completely surrendering? I don't think so. I think they need the attention shifted away from what's happening in Minneapolis, but we won't know until we see those numbers. We won't know.
You know, Paz is constantly talking about how, like, he sees us hurtling towards civil war. And there's an element of truth to what he's saying, in the sense that we're already in a kind of civil war. So it's not like a hot civil war in terms of like the breakup of the Union, but it's sort of this sort of 10th Amendment, these sort of 10th Amendment sorts of fights that just kind of escalate to the point to where, you know, ultimately they have to go to court, and they just it ends up turning into a legal battle. A legal battle with perhaps like some kinetic moments, but like, do I ever think that, like, say the local PD will actually, like, you know, get into street battles with ICE? Probably not. And that's most likely not going to happen. So like this sort of hot civil war that he's talking about, I have my doubts about that. But these sorts of 10th Amendment conflicts where, you know, the feds and state governments kind of go back and forth and it ends up having to go to court. I mean, we're already there. We've been there since Obama. But anyway, that's all I got for you guys today.